Beginning to Know Podcasting Network welcomes you to Balls and Brew.
Good evening. We are live here on Facebook. Maybe you are checking us out later on YouTube. Maybe you are just listening to us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thank you for spending some time with us. My name is Rod Morgan. I will serve as your host this evening for Balls and Brew, our sports podcast where we talk about sports that involve balls. And we do it kind of like you might with your buddies when you're sitting around having a few brews. That is the reason for the name. The reason that this podcast exists for you to be able to watch or listen to is because of the hard work of one man and one man alone. That is our executive producer. He is James Thomas Jamriska. Jimmy, hello.
If I wasn't good at this, I'd be good at nothing because I cannot pick a game to save my life in the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL games do tend to elude you, but if you stick around a little bit, you will hear Jimmy crow to no end about how good he is at picking basketball teams. So you know what I mean? The yin and the yang, right, Jim?
Reigning, defending, let's go.
Speaking of reigning, defending, old, decrepit, decaying, I'm not entirely sure which words we use to describe him, but we love him nonetheless. He's our old man. He's down there in Bloomington, decked out in all the Hoosier gear because he was so excited at how good they looked the other night versus Illinois. It's Chris King.
I mean, you're just firing shots right off the bat, Rod.
Let's go.
I hadn't necessarily decided on who the Joker was going to be later, but I think you just sealed it.
Nice. Well, listen, they probably deserve it. We'll get there when we talk basketball. But first, we talk football. See how smooth that transition was? Almost like I've been hosting an awful lot of these. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell your friends. Listen in sometime. He's our football handicapper because he plugs in the numbers. He has his own power rankings. He has his own formulas. He has things that he does with games, folks, that even after all of these years of podcasting together, he still will not tell me because they are proprietary to Williams HQ. He's our football handicapper. He's Josh Williams. Josh, hello.
What's up, boys? I was telling Jimmy in the pregame fist fight that I actually went 5-1 on the games that I had a lean on last week. Of course, because we're done with the terrible regular season. So hit on Houston over Chargers, Baltimore over Pittsburgh, Buffalo over KC, Philly over Green Bay. Hit the upset pick of the week, Rams over the Vikings. The only game that I lost, and I didn't really make a pick on this, but I will say that I lost because I bet on this and with my own money, is the stupid Rod. I hate this Washington Commandos team. I absolutely hate them. I took Baker in Tampa. I hate this Washington team. We'll get into it a little bit later about how lucky this team really is.
Oh, luck. You love talking about your luck factors. You have your own luck breakdowns. And that game's rough for me. Listen, I got to say, you know how much we love Baker. There's plenty of audio evidence of my love for Baker Mayfield, but I also love Jaden Daniels. And what's not to love about the Commandos? Chris, we're talking about a team that had an owner that had them down in the dumps. You talk about ownership and all of that, right? I mean, you got to be happy for the Commandos, no?
F the commies, Rod.
Oh, goodness. Jimmy,
I'm a Cowboys fan, Rod.
All right, fine. I forgot.
I'm not going to root.
I was like,
and they're going to play the Lions, who I have been behind for the last 3-4 years on this podcast. So, of course, I am not rooting for the Commanders. And I think, as much as I hate to admit because I don't believe in it, but I think their luck has run out.
My goodness. Jimmy, okay, Chris cannot be impartial at all. Can you please just speak to the situation of how we should be excited for the Commandos?
The people of Washington need something to cheer about. What do they have? They have nothing. They have the Wizards, who have 6 more wins than we do as an NBA franchise this season. They have the Nationals, who won a World Series and then let generational players just leave. There's some other things going on in Washington, so of course we want the Commandos to be good. The Lions is a great story, but you know what else is a great story? Jaden Daniels, the Washington Commandos. I'm pumped. Let's go.
Williams, listen, you're talking an awful lot about luck, but let's just go to that game right there because that was a great game. Daniels, come on. You have to see it in this kid now. After a playoff game, Williams, it can't be luck anymore. Can it just be that this guy is poised and he's been through a lot of games and he knows how to win close games? We've seen a bunch of evidence to that fact just this year.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I was totally wrong on Daniels. He looks the part. He's been awesome. I'm talking about more so the whole team is just extremely lucky. And believe it or not, he hasn't been as good versus man or the blitz this year. And that's what Detroit plays a ton of the time on defense. Washington has the highest fourth down EPA rate in the last 20 years. They have the most fourth down conversions converted in a season in NFL history. The luck metric for this team, they've added 185% from luck stats from the regular season. That's equivalent to 2 full wins. That's stats like opposing D's dropping interceptions, opposing offenses dropping passes by their wide receivers and tight ends, field goal luck, fumble recoveries. We saw the doink, the doink to win it. Awesome. Everything you can think of. How much longer can they get away with this? Like Chris was saying, Washington D, 24th rush success rate allowed, 27th in rush EPA allowed. We know Detroit loves to pound the rock. Washington, 26 DVOA defending tight ends. They are third worst in the league at defending the middle of the field. And if you dig deeper into this Washington tight end defense, I think it's even worse than I initially thought. They played Dallas without Ferguson. They played Philly without Goddard. They played Zona without McBride. I think Laporta can have a huge game here. Washington getting 51% of the bets, but Detroit is taking 64% of the handle.
Of course they are. Everybody loves the Lions. Of course they are. Listen, hold on. You don't have to break the whole game down yet.
That was it.
About good luck there. Well, then fine. Well, then you can talk just about the Lions when we get to the game. But here's the thing. All right. Here's the thing. You can give me all of those stats that you want, and then I will come back and I will say sometimes there's a team, and that team is the team of destiny. And if you got a team that won a game on a Hail Mary and continues to get these things done in the clutch, Chris, I'm going to portray to you that this could possibly be the team of destiny. So can you try now to set your hatred aside for the Commandos and speak to, are they possibly the team of destiny?
I don't think they'd be the team of destiny. I think there's another team out there that could possibly be that team. I don't think it's Washington this year. I do think that it's unfortunate that Washington lost to Baker. I really wanted Baker to show up in this game to show that he deserved to be in the Pro Bowl more than Daniels did. So I do have to give Washington a little bit of credit. And listen, Washington poached Snyder, right? That's my guy from Dallas. So I feel like they're taking some of that glory that we gave them to succeed here. So I got to give them a little credit, but I do not want them to win.
Look at you. I appreciate you there. And Chris, because I appreciate you being able to set your impartiality aside there, that I will not even bring up the Cowboys. All right. It's been a bad enough week for the Cowboys. We don't need to talk about the Cowboys here. All right. What we do want to talk about, Williams, is something that you and I clocked. All right. We said that at some point in that football game, Jim Harbaugh was going to be on the sidelines with Harbaugh face. And that's exactly what happened. The Houston Texans came out and looked like the team that everybody told us they were going to be in the preseason, and then proceeded to never look like at any point during the regular season. And the Chargers chargered. But we were on that, weren't we, Williams?
Yes, everybody except for Jimmy. I was surprised that everybody had Houston there. Herbert did not have a good game. You know what was crazy about that game is that the whole game changed on a bad snap from Houston. The ball that went over Stroud's head, and it luckily just bounced in his hand. It's 3rd and 16. He scrambles around, throws a deep pass to Collins, and then the whole game switched on that play. It was what in the world is happening here? So, as Chris said, Chargers are going to Charger. I think they beat up on a bunch of bad teams. Harbaugh still did a good job. This team really didn't have that much talent, and to get them to 10 wins.
We're going to stop. We're going to stop, all right? Because you're trying to give the Chargers some sort of credit. You guys have talked about how good Herbert is over the years, and I have been maybe a hater or a doubter at best. But, this just proves my point, I think, is that Herbert has been overrated, and the Chargers are going to keep doing this same type of thing every single year.
Jimmy, it's certainly hard to say that Chris is wrong here. You've been a Los Angeles supporter before. You were all in on this team last year before Harbaugh came in. I'd like to think that you have some thoughts on the Chargers.
I might be out on the Chargers finally. If Harbaugh can't get him to stop charging, I don't know who can. I think you should trade Herbert to the Indianapolis Colts. I think that For some reason, the franchise is bitten, and I don't even know. That was pathetic. They were controlling the whole game, and it was 6-0. So you knew something was going to happen. Stupid Chargers.
Yeah, that was the Shakey's Bowl. I must admit, I did not watch much of that game, and then the other games got a little bit out of control. Williams, I guess the Broncos sorta for maybe a quarter, maybe convinced everybody that they might be able to hang into that game, and then it was basically just over from that point. And so here we are. We're moving on to this week. Let's start out with the game that will start us all on Saturday. Houston. The NFL refuses to let them play on an NFL playoff day that is not Saturday, so they are playing versus Kansas City in the first game. Mahomes has been off for a little while. Kansas City didn't really worry about winning week 18, and then they had the bye week off. Williams, what do you think that has us expecting in this game?
Yeah, Casey's favored by 8.5, and some Mahomes stats here. Not only has this guy never lost in the divisional round, he's 6-0. He's never thrown an interception in the divisional round. It's unbelievable. The only guys that have beat him are Brady and Burrow. Both times never touched the ball in OT of those AFC Conference Championship games. He did have obviously the bad Super Bowl loss to Tampa when his offensive line was pretty banged up. But I think Casey's getting healthy here. Listen to this: only 45 snaps together on the field at the same time this season for Pacheco, Hopkins, and Hollywood Brown. Their average yards per play a full yard higher when those three guys are out there at the same time. And the Chiefs D play man coverage at one of the highest rates in the league. They're getting cornerback Jalen Watson back here. He's one of the top graded man corners in the league. And Houston had to cut Deontay Johnson after the game. He's like screaming and yelling as something might be mentally wrong with him. Steph Diggs is out, obviously, for the year. Tank Dell out for the year. We know Spags has always done a great job limiting opposing wide receiver ones. So how much does Collins really get? And also the Texans backup tight end, Cade Stover, he just went on IR. Mixon was just questionable today at practice. And Robert Woods and John Mechie were statistically versus man than zone. So who did they go here to get any offense? I think they're going to go to Dalton Schultz. Casey gives up the 5th highest target rate to tight ends because their defensive schemes more times than not is filtered away from perimeter wide receivers. And tight ends have gone over 40 yards receiving versus KC in 12 of 16 games. Last time I looked, Schultz's prop line was 36. So in Houston, early down pass rate from week 1 to week 12, only 53%. I was getting on Bobby Sloak for that, but he's done better recently. The early down pass rate from week 12 on 63%. That's 3rd highest in the league. And then it went up even higher last week on early downs if you remove garbage time at a 71% clip. So at least that's something that Houston can hopefully grow on it. But the Texans getting 56% of the bets here, but KC taking 54% of the handle. I like KC to eventually pull away from the Texans here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not sexy. It's not like a hot take to say that Kansas City's going to win this game, Chris, right? But I think what is important is what Williams said there near the beginning, where he mentioned the name Pacheco and he mentioned the name Hollywood Brown, right? These are two guys that basically weren't really playing for this Kansas City offense during that point in the year when everybody was like, hey, what's going on with Kansas City? They don't really seem to be clicking. Now they're adding 2 significant weapons to the offense. I think that's going to make a difference.
If you're a Kansas City Chief fan, you're praying it does, right? Because that's the one part of your team that doesn't look great throughout the season is the offense. All that being said, and as favored as Kansas City is and as crazy as some of their victories have been during the regular season, I think the Texans might be this year's team of destiny, Rod. I think that's a team that could get through the AFC somehow and make it to the Super Bowl. The way they played, they were able to overcome that adversity on whether it's a play, a drive, or anything else. They took control of that game. They impressed me. And I don't like to root for them because they're our rival as a Colts fan, right? But I think it may be their year to make a run to the Super Bowl.
Jimmy, that's interesting, right? Like, that's definitely a hot take to say that Houston's going to beat Kansas City. But what I like what Chris is doing there is he's taken into account that Baltimore and Buffalo are going to beat each other up in that game, right? So if Houston does sneak by Kansas City, they might be playing somebody that's a little bit weakened there. I like where Chris is going. I don't know if I want to walk out on the pier with him, but I don't hate that.
CJ Stroud had his highest total yards in a long time and his highest completion percentage too. or second highest completion percentage since October in that game. I think he did a really good job coming back. Maybe he's starting to catch fire, but I just think the Chiefs are going to be too much for him.
Yeah, I think and then it's the injury factor, right, Chris? So I think you're right that they could be the team of destiny, but Williams laid it out there how banged up that Houston really is. You know what I mean? So I think that ultimately, but the team of destiny, it doesn't matter how injured you are, right? So you could be onto something there, Chris. I like that. Lions, we heard an awful lot about Washington already. Williams, you got a couple of things to say about how you think Detroit's going to look in this game?
Yeah, I just don't see Washington's defense hanging with this Detroit offense. I will say this has the most fourth down variance game written all over it, because these two Dans, Dan Campbell and Dan Quinn, they want to go for it on every single fourth down. So yeah, it's going to be a high variance game, but I think how Detroit played on defense with Alex Anzalone coming back last week against Minnesota was really promising for that defense. You get that crowd fired up. They're ready to go. They got the 1 seed. They're playing at home. I just don't see this. I talked about the Washington, how bad they were against tight ends, how bad they are against the rush. I mean, hello, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Sam Laporta. And oh, by the way, Amon-Ra St. Brown ain't too bad either, and Jamison Williams ain't too bad. So I'm hoping. Let's go. Let's Saturday. Let's just go chalk. I'm not with Chris. That Houston has no chance. Let's go chalk. Let's go Detroit and Kansas City, and then the other 4 teams on Sunday. I'm fine with any of those outcomes. But let's get Detroit and Kansas City through on Saturday. Then we're almost guaranteed an awesome Super Bowl, no matter what happens on Sunday.
All right, here's what I worry about. All right, Williams. Now, I'm not the handicapper that you are, right? And I'm not as good. I'm not like a scheme lord or any of that stuff, okay? But I know that what Detroit did to Minnesota in that Sunday night game is okay when the quarterback pulling the strings is Sam Darnold, all right? But I worry about if they're trying to play that blitzing scheme and that hard man-to-man kind of press stuff with a guy like Jaden Daniels who can beat them, right? Who can beat them with his legs, you know what I mean? Who won't be afraid to make plays, right? The things that Sam Darnold basically died on the cross the last 2 weeks and lost himself millions of dollars. Jay Daniels isn't going to be afraid to do that. So Chris, think that the team I might like to say would pull an upset this weekend is Washington, right? For the same reason you said that Houston is the team of destiny. I like the vibe that Washington has going here, and I like getting in early on a guy that people seem to believe in, right? These Washington veterans seem to follow Daniels and give me an athlete, right? What I wish Anthony Richardson might be able to become someday, and it certainly looks like he won't be able to, is what it looks like Jaden Daniels is right now. So I don't know that I want to say that Washington's going to win, but man, if you were going to tell me I had to pick an upset, that might be the one I go with. Jimmy, your thoughts?
No, I think so. They might be that team of destiny like Chris was talking about earlier, but I don't think Washington's going to win this one, unfortunately.
All right, there we go. Chris and I tried to spice up Saturday for you, and Williams and Jimmy just rained all over the parade. Let's move on to Sunday. We get the actual lowest seed to move on to the next round of the playoffs. That's the Los Angeles Rams, doing it for the city of Los Angeles. Congratulations to them. Congratulations to Sean McVay. An incredibly coached game there. The Rams just looked great. And now they move on to play in the Eagles team, Williams, which sort of looked broken and dysfunctional even in a playoff win, right? Is it fair to say that the Eagles looked that way even though they won?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Philly's favored by 6 here, and they have faced the easiest schedule of opposing defenses this season. I think that's one of the reasons why I like them in the Wins League this year. And we weren't sold on Sirianni, which I'm still not really sold on Sirianni, but at least he has kind of quieted the ship there.
Quick, I should say, I'd like to think I was wrong and right on that take, Williams, because I was dead wrong saying that he was going to get fired and that the Eagles were going to not make the playoffs. Clearly, I was dead wrong on that, but I was right that dude's a joke and that nobody on that team seems to care anything of what he has to say. So I was like 50-50 on that take, but ultimately wrong because the Eagles had a good record.
I agree. Both of these teams top 6 in red zone defense. That may surprise a few people, especially on the Rams side. And the Rams offense is 25th in red zone touchdown percentage, which also might surprise some people. Nobody has a bigger split with going up against man or zone than Hurts. And the Rams secondary plays a lot of zone. That's what he struggles with. The Rams gave up 314 rushing yards, though, to Philly in Week 12. I think the Rams have to sell out here to stop the run. And Barkley, you have to make Jalen Hurts beat you. Last week versus the Pack, Hurts finished with a 35% success rate. That's the worst for any quarterback in the playoffs in the last 10 years. He looks like a shell of himself from when he was fantastic in that Super Bowl 2 years ago. And those stats, that's 224th out of 224 quarterbacks in the last 10 years in the playoffs. That's terrible. And if that wasn't enough, I don't think AJ Brown is 100% healthy. I mean, on a positive note, he took that book Inner Excellence from 523rd on the bestsellers list all the way to number 1. So he's got that going for him, which is nice.
I don't want to come off anti-reading here because my son, the Vanimal, is a big fan of the library, but I can't think, Jimmy, that it's a great sign for your playoff team when your wide receiver is reading a book on the sidelines, right?
Yeah. That's what happens when you're reading on the sidelines. You don't get to hear what your producer's saying to you.
Does look like a good take too, James.
You're all fired up.
I had a good take. I was all fired up, and I'm also trying to produce another show too. So we're going through all that. Hey, by the way, any Taylor Sheridan fans out there, we got something coming for you here in well, depending on when we want to put it out there. Listen, how do you get the book out there? How do you make sure no one like, oh, hey, this was just randomly here. Let's put it away. It doesn't get wet. Doesn't get cold. You know, what is going on? Why would someone just think to do that? Why are people weird, Rod?
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like no one was keeping track of that book. You know what I mean? They certainly weren't keeping it on guard the way that Biff guards the future book of all the bets, right? That ends up throwing off the space-time continuum Back to the Future. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to be going as far as to read a book on the sidelines, Chris, I'm with Jimmy. You should probably try to be a little more clandestine about it. So I think the point was to not be clandestine about it, right?
Well, listen, these are sports personalities, all right? These are entertainers as much as we want to call them athletes, right? And it doesn't matter if it was 50 years ago and there was a random guy on the sidelines getting a heater during a timeout, or Major League Baseball, guys just having huge wads of dip in their chaw and spitting all over the place. This is just something a little bit.
Was he getting a heater or was he smoking a heater? I think we should probably.
He was getting a heater in. That would be smoking a cigarette for those young ones out there. So it's just something that's random and weird, and different athletes have different things. Like if it's a motivational book that he's read a lot, then I don't care. And I also don't really care if he knows his progressions on his routes and he's ready to go, then yeah, get some motivation in. I'm fine with it.
There you have it. Chris says read J.D. Salinger on the sideline if you want to. It's okay. As long as you can still run the button hook, it's just fine. Go right ahead. Williams, it sounds like maybe you're leaning Rams. Are you leaning Rams in this game?
Yeah, even though they're bottom 5 versus tight ends, but Goddard missed practice today with an illness. So
that run was incredible, by the way. I mean, just chucking that dude like 3 different times. Like that dude shouldn't even play football ever again, man. That's like the worst. You're already a professional athlete, I know. But the worst indignation you could suffer as a professional athlete is just being chucked like that 3 straight times.
There were some awesome straight arms last week. Him, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, get off me. Some ref stats. Sean Smith reffing this game. He's got massive splits against home teams. In 2023, home teams were only 3-13 on the money line. He's like the anti-John Hussey. And against the spread in his career, home teams are 15 games under 500. I know you guys love the Hussey reference. That's why I am leaning.
Everybody says it. I don't know how many people I run into. They're like, this guy, John Hussey. I'm telling you.
Yes. I think you're right, Rod. I don't know if they're going to win outright, but I think 6 points is way too much here. You guys are all talking about Team of Destiny. What about the emotional Team of Destiny? Yeah. All the LA Fires, this Rams team. Let's break it down. Who's got the better coach? It's the Rams. Who's got the better quarterback right now? More experienced quarterback? It's the Rams. Who's got a comparable defensive line? You would have never said at the beginning of the year, but I think Les Snead,
guys that are hungry, man.
Les Snead has done a fantastic job. GM. We said that he sold his soul to the devil a few years ago, which he did, but he had to hit on those draft picks, and he did. Jared Verse.
Turn it over yet, clearly, right? The devil says we'll collect that later down the road. We're going to let you keep rolling.
they've been fantastic, Jared Verse and Kobe Turner. So I don't think it would shock anybody if the Rams went in there and kept this game close.
All right, well, there you have it. Chris, what do you think? Are you going to go upset in this game?
Oh, yeah, I'm going Rams, all right, because I think without Barkley, this Eagles team doesn't make the playoffs. I don't think you're looking at Kellen Moore getting asked to be interviewed by the Cowboys for a head coaching job. I think if the Rams sell out to stop Barkley, I think they win this game.
James, Thomas, what say you?
Man, I don't know. Here's the thing. Like, Los Angeles and I don't get along. We just don't. So if I pick the Rams, the Eagles are going to win. But then I should pick the Eagles, right? Because they're better than the Rams. So what do? I don't want to pick the Eagles and then Saquon's going to get hurt. You know that's going to happen, right?
True.
So I'm going to pick the Rams. I'm going to stay with LA. Let's go. LA Rams are going to win, and just Saquon, you owe me.
Then you know what? We'll somehow blame the Chargers for this, Jim, right? We'll just keep
Yeah.
it
Oh, no
centric
question.
somehow. Yeah. We'll just blame the Chargers. All right, let's hope that maybe that upset happens and people will be fired up, and then it will lead us into a monumental playoff matchup. All right. You know, we often say to ourselves, we want a game and machinations happen and weird seedings and tiebreakers and somebody chokes in a week that they weren't supposed to, and it doesn't happen, but we're getting it. Lamar, Josh Allen, the two leading contenders for an MVP, the two best teams in the AFC, not named Kansas City, are going to meet up for the right to take on someone in the AFC Championship game. Williams, what breakdown do you have for us of the monumental Bills v. Ravens showdown?
Yeah, man, isn't this great? This is get your popcorn ready. This is everyone who thought Josh Allen had this MVP wrapped up a few weeks ago. Now I'm not sure. It could go to Lamar. So these are the top two vote getters for MVP, and I promise we'll get to them shortly. But the Ravens beat the Bills 35-10 in Week 4 earlier in the year. But at that time, Buffalo's defense was extremely banged up. Matt Milano, stud linebacker for Buffalo, he's coming back from injury, but I don't think he's 100% coming off the injury here. Last week, he just didn't look right. And a big concern for the Bills is their D-line. It's undersized. And what happens when the Ravens go super heavy personnel, 22 personnel? You don't see that very often. 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. The Ravens only use that formation 13% of the time, but they are awesome when they do. They're number 1 in EPA per pass, number 1 in EPA per rush. So Buffalo hasn't been great versus that formation because of how small they are on the D-line. And get this, guys, Lamar is the most profitable quarterback in history in the first half. Do you have any guess on who is the most profitable quarterback in NFL history in the second half?
Josh Allen?
It is none other than Josh Allen.
Wow.
Buffalo has played a much easier schedule than Baltimore. But, I mean, the Ravens D since Week 12, though, number 1 in DVOA. I think the Bills are going to have to win this game. They're going to have to go and attack cornerback Brandon Stevens from the Ravens. Nobody knows who that is. Then there's a reason why. There's a 63% success rate allowed when targeted, and Stevens' coverage grade per PFF is 175th out of 223 qualified corners. Compare that to Marlon Humphrey, who is 5th, and Nate Wiggins is 57th. And at the safety position, Kyle Hamilton, shout out Notre Dame, is 5th out of 170 qualified safeties. So 54% of the bets are on Buffalo, but 53% of the handle is on the Ravens. Pretty split there. If you made me make a choice here, I took the Ravens plus 1.5 at the earlier in the week. That line has flipped. So now it's the Ravens are favored by 1.5 or 1. So I have closing line value on the Ravens, which that hasn't really done me any good this year, but at least I have some closing line value. I'm with the Sharps. So give me the Ravens to take down Buffalo here on Sunday. What do you guys think?
Ravens taking down the Bills, huh? I know the folks in Buffalo are really, really excited. I know they want their shot at Kansas City. Baltimore, they want their shot at Kansas City. I can't help but think it's something that I mentioned when Chris talked about the Texans winning earlier, that this game is just going to be an absolute slugfest, and whoever wins this game is just going to turn around and be disappointed and lose to Kansas City again. I think that's kind of what I think. But if you're going to tell me who wins, I think Josh Allen gets it done here. Chris, what do you got?
So I have a dilemma like Jimmy had the last one, right? Because I do want Baltimore to win. I want Lamar to show that he's more deserving of the MVP than Josh Allen. I do think in the fourth quarter, I would much rather have Josh Allen as my quarterback, though. I'm not going to lie. I still think Baltimore wins. I think with Henry in the backfield, they're a bit of a different beast, and I don't think Buffalo can handle it.
All right, it's been brought up twice here now, so I have to address it here real quick before I go to you for your pick, Jimmy. All right, we're gonna let Lamar win 3 MVPs and not have any real playoff victories and not have a Super Bowl like that. We're just doing that. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to stay consistent. I made this argument when we were gonna give Jokic the MVP before he finally got his championship, so I got to make it now. We're gonna let Lamar clock in at 3 MVPs, 1 behind Peyton Manning, and he's got no championships. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that.
I mean, you can't. It's about the regular season, right? It's a regular season award.
Else in this regular season has a very good case for MVP, so let's give it to
Not him. Near as good as what Lamar is. Lamar has more yards, more total touchdowns, only 1 more total turnover. Allen has.
Well, then give him Offensive Player of the Year. Then give him Offensive Player of the Year. You take Josh Allen away from the Bills, they're picking 3rd. Like legitimately.
You take Lamar away from Baltimore, they're not making the playoffs any of the last 5 years.
No. I don't know. King Henry gets an awful lot of credit there. I think there's still a floor to Baltimore.
Without Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, they don't even go after a Derrick Henry.
Maybe, but I'm just saying I think there's a floor to Baltimore, right? I mean, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl there, man. We saw Trent Dilfer.
They had Ray Lewis on that team. I think that is a little bit of a difference.
Defense on this team. I'm not trying. See, this is the thing that happens, right? You have to attack either one. That's why I wasn't attacking Lamar. I just asked the question: are we going to give him his 3rd MVP without a championship? That's all I was asking.
I think you have to.
All right. Well, I disagree, but that's fine. Jimmy Jam, who do you think's winning this game?
The MVP is going to win this game. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills will win this game.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against I'm gonna go against Lamar again for some reason because I just don't learn anything.
I know. Listen, he burns me all the time too. He kills me in fantasy football. So I'm starting to be a non-Lamar guy. It clearly seems. But you know what I am is a Notre Dame guy. And oh yeah, I don't think we were gonna leave this episode without touching on the national championship game because Williams, I know you got some thoughts. Jimmy Jammy, you used to work for the Ohio State University, so I'm sure you got some thoughts. And Chris, your Indiana Hoosiers, you're no longer watching them play college basketball, so I'm sure you're excited about Notre Dame playing in this championship game.
That's cold. That's cold, Rod.
Listen, you know you were just as mad as all the other IU people the other night when they were getting smoked off the floor at halftime by Illinois.
Oh, yeah, no. Who wouldn't be upset? But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop watching them because I'm a fan, Rod. I support
Illinois
my teams.
Is a powerhouse.
As they are a powerhouse. They got that Lithuanian kid that looks like he's going to be really, really good. But as I said the other night when they were getting smoked, let's just have Sig coach both teams, all right? Because he's a winner. Google him. All right, here's what's going to happen in this game, okay? I mentioned this when we were talking about Notre Dame a little bit, and I said that I did not want to rain on their parade, and I feel bad about raining on their parade, but Jimmy, I am nothing if not a truth teller. I am nothing if not someone who is going to tell people the way I see it. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for anybody. And I think what we are going to see on Monday is what $44 million in NIL money buys you. Okay, this is the most expensive team college football has ever seen, and Notre Dame is already thin on both lines. Okay, so we're just going to see absolute sheer domination in the trenches by Ohio State. Now, does that mean that I think Ohio State's going to absolutely wipe the floor with Notre Dame score-wise? Maybe not. I think Notre Dame's crafty enough on special teams. They're good enough on defense, and Marcus Freeman's a good enough coach that they'll keep this thing close. But Jimmy, as I told the Mrs. Morgan, if you don't watch the football on this game and you just watch the lines, you are going to see utter and sheer domination by the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The only thing that I can say that it gives me a glimmer of hope is that Notre Dame never wins any of the games they've won over the past month. They lose the Indiana game all the time. They get killed by Georgia all the time. The Penn State game, they would lose that too. They never a field goal to win the game. That never happens. So that is the one glimmer of hope I have for Notre Dame and Ohio State. Ohio State is angry. Ohio State is still, reeling from that. The Michigan thing just turned something on, and they're going after it. The $44 million in NIL. Remember, a lot of that was to keep players that they had already. They did bring in a couple of really, really good players as well. I am nervous that this one might be the one Notre Dame loses big. And then everyone is going to say this is the worst idea ever. We are still talking about college football. We've been talking consistently about a ton of games. Everyone has played in these tournament games. It's been great, but I do think Ohio State wins.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think no matter what, I think all four of us have won by the fact that no SEC team is in the championship game. We can finally stop hearing them crow about how unfair everything was.
2 straight years, no SEC team.
Right? So, and they had plenty of opportunities this year with 12 teams getting into the playoffs. So, I think we've all benefited from that, right? It's included the rest of the country into this college football championship, and I think that's a good thing. That being said, you have the nation's top scoring defense and the nation's second top scoring defense in these two teams. I think it is going to be a drag punch out. I think you're going to see maybe a big play or two from Ohio State on offense and a big play or two on special teams from Notre Dame, and I think it's going to be close. I'm going Irish.
Nice. Look at you, Chris. Williams, I'm going to ask you a question that I know you don't have anything prepared on, and then you can give me your breakdown, all right? Do you think Marcus Freeman ends up in the NFL sooner rather than later? Because we're hearing a bunch of those overtures right now.
All right. First off, let me just circle back just for a quick second on the MVP race.
Answer the question.
How come How come they both can't win? A la 2003, Peyton Manning and the late great Steve McNair. Chris is right. Lamar has better stats. Jimmy is right. Take Josh Allen off that team. They're nowhere. Let's give it to them both. Okay, Rod's question. Marcus Freeman, the NFL. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Possibly.
You're the coach guy around here. You know college football. You know NFL coaching. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, I think I don't want to get myself in trouble here. Yeah, it's a tough question. I think he's more structured.
You want him to be your Bears coach, don't you? You secretly want him to be your Bears coach, don't you?
No. You know my love for Ben Johnson. So I think he's more structured for college right now. Maybe in the future, the pros. I could see him maybe a Tomlin type with Marcus Freeman.
All right, well,
he's definitely a great motivator.
Game, then? I made you uncomfortable, which I love to do, but how does he pull a rabbit out of his hat and win this game for Notre Dame?
Yeah, let me just say, 2 months ago, I don't know if I told you guys this, I have Notre Dame 30-1 to win the national championship. So hopefully they can get this done. The Irish have covered 11 straight games. So let me just say, I'm not strong on either side here. Like in the college football playoff, I've had Ohio State to cover versus Tennessee. I've had Penn State to cover versus SMU. Had Texas to cover against Clemson. Arizona State to cover against Texas. Ohio State to cover versus Texas. Won all those games. I was more confident in all those than I am with this game. So Ohio State, from basically the start of the season, even after a loss to Oregon, Rod, you're right. They were the highest power-rated team in the country. You say, well, what does that really mean? It means that if they play their A game throughout the season, they are the most talented team in the nation. That's fine. What they are not, though, is consistent. And I think the most consistent team in the country this season has been Notre Dame. And you're right. If Ohio State plays their A game, I think they can win this game by 20+. But how many times are you going to get that versus this good of defense and this good of defensive coordinator? Notre Dame comes consistent with their B+ game, and they face Ohio State into their C game like they had versus Texas, or even worse, their D game versus Michigan. They can not only hang in this game, but they can win it. So, strictly breaking this down, the Irish play a ton of man. Will they bring the safeties up and help in the run game, or will they leave them back to help out versus Smith and Igbuka? Remember, Igbuka had double-digit touchdowns this year. He had 7 catches for 96 yards versus Notre Dame last year. But Igbuka versus Penn State, Michigan, and Texas this year, the 3 toughest Ds he has seen, never went over 51 yards in any of them. And Notre Dame, in my opinion, has a better defense than all 3 of those. And remember, Notre Dame saw these guys last year going toe-to-toe with them, losing 17-14 on the last play of the game. I think that gives them a lot of confidence that they can hang with them. A la 2007 Giants. I don't know if anybody remembers this. They played the Patriots the last week of the season. They lost the regular season. I think that gave them a ton of confidence, though, that they also saw some of the stuff that Patriots did, and they pulled off the even more of an upset than this would be. So, like I said, Ohio State last year scored more than 35 points against everyone they faced in the regular season except for IU, Michigan, and Notre Dame. all three comparable defenses. The Irish held them to their lowest point total of the 2023 season with only 17. They also held them to their lowest point total in 2022 with 21. So, and Notre Dame is number one at forcing turnovers in the country, and they need them bad in this game. I have faith that the Notre Dame defense can hang with them. My question is the Notre Dame offense. Can they hang with them?
No,
and
the answer to that is no. Notice that Chris said Notre Dame is going to get plays on special teams, right? He threw that in when he was even saying that Notre Dame was going to be able to hang in the game.
Chris, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a fake punt, something like that, or try to get them offsides like they did earlier. But I will say this, ND on offense last week versus a good Penn State defense, the last 32 minutes of that game, the Irish had 27 points and over 300 yards of offense.
Great
so
house.
I think Mike Denbrock, the OC for Notre Dame, he is the one that has to get a little more creative here. I didn't really love his game plan. Like you could tell some of the quarterback draws are you can get them out of there. Like the defense can see that coming. And we saw Texas expose Ohio State with their running back wheel routes just outside the red zone that resulted in touchdowns. I would love, no pun intended, to see Love and Aeneas Williams on the field at the same time, or Williams and Price. I know Aeneas Williams is only a freshman, but he gives you an explosive pass catcher out of the backfield that Ohio State probably isn't too focused on with how good of seasons Love and Price have had. But Jimmy's right. This team has a ton of heart. When they got down 10-0, and then again by a touchdown in the fourth quarter, I was like, "Oh, this team's done." And nope, they came back and won. So we've seen it. I mean, we haven't seen this before from Notre Dame, so that's what gives me hope. So if I had to make a bet on this game, I would take Notre Dame plus 9. I think that's too many points here, with considering how good the defense has shown up against Ohio State the last 2 years. But Rod, I could also see it. If Ohio State's offense is rolling, I could see them, winning this game by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So
listen, I have the misfortune of watching the first half of the Oregon game in the Rose Bowl. All right, I mean the team that I watched in the first half of the Rose Bowl versus Oregon, a team that was the number one team in the country, undefeated. I was told was going to roll to the championship, and then Ohio State just absolutely trucked them. I mean, it was over quick. And those guys are fast. Those guys are big. And Notre Dame on defense, you're right. But they rely on turnovers because they kind of like to press guys. They like to play those safeties up. And I'm just worried about Travion Henderson hitting another 75-yard screen, or I'm worried about a deep bomb. And like I said, I just think Notre Dame's going to have so much trouble in the trenches that, yeah, you can scheme things up and you can fight and you can claw and keep in it. But when it comes down to the end of the game, Ohio State's still going to be winning up front at the line of scrimmage. And I'd take Notre Dame at 9.5, but I think Ohio State's going to win the game. And I'm bummed about that because I receive a paycheck from Notre Dame and so does Mrs. Morgan, but it just is what it is. I gotta tell the people what I really see. Williams, do you have anything else for the folks, or can we move on and talk about a little basketball? Because I think referees might actually come up in basketball. That's a tease, folks.
Yeah, just a quick recap of the year. I promise I'm not toting myself here, but I hit the plus 650 future division win on Tampa Bay for 1.5 units. Hit a 30-1 ridiculous 10-leg cross sport parlay for half a unit. Probably shouldn't recommend a half a unit on a 30-1, but that's okay. I also helped, but maybe we should do strictly survivor picks next year because of how bad I was against the spread this last year. Survivor picks. I helped a buddy tie for first in this second chance survivor pool, went 18-0. There was 1,980 entries. It was a $25 entry. So the prize pool was $50,000, but he tied with 47 other players. So he only got a little over 1,000, but that's still 42x his money. So yeah,
take it. You'll take it. Listen, wait, I'm open to suggestions. If you think survivor pool picks next year can be fun, I'm open to suggestions. You know what I mean? Whatever is entertaining for the people, that's what I want to do because that's what we do here. And you know what else we do here? We talk basketball. But because I like to have crazy basketball takes, I like Jimmy to be the one to host. We're going to run the fast break.
Welcome to the Fast Break, the fastest 15 minutes in the NBA. Jimmy, Rod, and Chris are here with you. We are talking NBA. We are talking the reigning and defending champion of the Wins League. Jimmy continuously just destroys everybody. 216 wins to 196 to 185. Rod, I know we talked about this last week. We may have to go to weekly wins, perhaps, to see if you can even win on that.
Well, I'll
which
tell you
I
what, I
doubt.
got to looking at my team, and you made a staunch defense for all you need to do is pick better teams. And Jim, I got to looking at my team, and quite frankly, you might be right. Why in the world was I picking Phoenix third? What was I thinking about there? I picked Golden State. I picked Philadelphia. I mean, I get what I deserve at this point. I mean, those are my picks, and those teams are bad. And then I picked the Celtics, and they're scuffling along, and I'm terrified, Jimmy, terrified of who might be the jester in the hierarchy later in this.
I think you're the jester in the hierarchy later. I think Chris is just going to forego his gimmick and just make you the jester. One thing we do need to talk about, you know what? We're going to talk about some Raw Damnation stuff here in a little bit, but I do want to talk about Chris's Indiana Pacers, who, last I checked, are 8-2 over their last 10, including a pretty big win in Cleveland. Chris, how excited are you for the Pacers?
They're playing like we wanted them to play at the beginning of the year, right? I mean, their offense is running. They're moving up and down the court like we like to see. Like, this is the Pacers team we wanted to see at the beginning of the year. It's unfortunate that we got off to that slow, rocky start, but like, yeah, we're back up into sixth in the East, right? We're out of the play-in games. We're solidly in the playoffs. Keep moving up. We're not that far behind Orlando. We can keep on climbing. This is a fun team to watch right now.
Rod, do you think this is more of like the Tyrese Halliburton being exhausted from all his playing time in the Olympics?
No, I was actually I love that you went to Halliburton. You know me so well. I was actually gonna go. Do we have a little bit of a Ewing theory here? Because Halliburton actually went out in the second half of that game where the Pacers beat the Cavs. Are we a little Ewing theory here that the Pacers are actually better without the fake superstar Tyrese Halliburton? Oh my God! Did I just say fake superstar? I'm
you
sorry.
Did say fake superstar. He's an amazing human being, and you shut your mouth, Rod. By the way, just going back to the Wins League real quick, I noticed I have the two best teams in the league. I also have the two worst teams in the league on my team. So what the heck do I know?
But that's your brilliance. You balanced it out. If you're going to have the two worst teams, you better have the two best, Jimmy. So that's just your smarts right there. I'll pat you on the back.
I have a 6-win team and a 9-win team. I'm the only one that has less than 10. Oh, goodness gracious. We have had a big trade. Your Phoenix Suns, Rod, got Nick Richards from the Hornets. The Hornets don't even care anymore. They want that top 2 pick, either Harper or your Duke or your boy from Duke. Do you think this does anything for your Suns? Because Nurkic is in the doghouse.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If you have a Plumlee, I'm not even entirely sure which Plumlee it is on Phoenix anymore, but if you have a Plumlee and Nurkic as your centers, excuse me. If you have, I knew it. I thought I had something brewing, and there it was. I apologize. I had a mac and cheese portable in the car before we started here. But if you have a Plumlee and Nurkic as your center, then Nick Richards, who has the most generic sounding name in the entire world, that no one would be able to pick him out of a lineup whatsoever. And basically, you only have to know Nick Richards if you play fantasy basketball, because he's one of those guys that you think about picking up when you need somebody like 5 weeks in. You're like, well, Nick Richards can play center. And I guess he did get 38 that one game. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only people that know Nick Richards. But he can actually help Phoenix. And you know what else, Jimmy? Sneaky here? Like, he saved Matt Ishbia some money, because the guy that Phoenix shipped out to get Nick Richards makes more money than he does. So,
yeah, I mean, not bad there. Chris, was that the big trade you thought we were going to talk about this week?
I never really know what your plan is, Jimmy. You keep it a secret from me, so bring it on me.
I do. So, hey, quick question for you. If you had $5 billion to invest in something, would you invest in buying TikTok, or would you invest in an upstart basketball league that's going to go across the country with 6 men's teams and 6 women's teams to rival the NBA? What would you pick, Chris?
Well, I would probably pick... No, let's talk about this league, Jimmy, all right? Because I don't think you can claim... I don't think you can claim it as a rival to the NBA, right? Like this seems like a traveling type gimmick, more a la the Harlem Globetrotters than the NBA.
Or And One, perhaps, the And One league that's around.
Right, and yeah, if you are able to...
Are they bringing the professor back? Are they bringing the professor back? Hot sauce? No, I'm in.
Right. If they are able to bring the top talent with this money, a la like the Live Tour in golf, because I think that's what they're modeling this off of more than what the NBA does. So if they can take that money and maybe get some of these stars to really play, you could probably get somebody like a Westbrook to put on a show on that league than him playing second fiddle for the Nuggets, or whatever you were able to get. I think it's possible. I don't think you should come out and say you're going to try to rival the NBA. I think that's a little bit ridiculous.
It's a lot of it ridiculous, and it won't happen. NBA has enough trouble getting people to watch on a regular basis.
What are you talking about? 1.8 million people watch Thunder v Cavs on a Wednesday night, Jim. Come on, that's huge.
I appreciate you going there because I just wanted to shout out Thunder and Cavs for having an amazing game there. Both of them are 9-1 over the past 10. The Cavs obviously beating the Thunder, and then the Pacers obviously beating the Cavs. So, oh dear. Well, Rod's angry. I think I know what it's about. We'll see. Rod, damnation of the week.
Yep. Okay. My Rod damnation this week goes out to 3 people, and it goes out to 3 people and the NBA itself. All right. My Rod damnation this week goes out to John Conley, AJ Ganelli, and Bobby Basanti. Okay. The 3 referees scheduled for the Memphis Grizzlies versus San Antonio Spurs matchup last night. According to the NBA bylaws, I cannot find out which referee actually called the foul on Stephon Castle that negated the highlight of the frigging year, the highlight of the frigging decade. Basically, what everybody in the NBA has wanted to see was waved away last night, was waved away for a cheap-ass ticky-tack foul called on Stephon Castle, a rookie, when it was clear to everybody in the building that Ja Morant was by him and on his way to the basket. Basically, the reason you pay money to go into an NBA arena when Ja Morant comes to your town to see him throw down a dunk, and he's making his way down the lane to throw down a dunk on not only any big man, the big man, the alien, Victor Wembanyama. Ja Morant climbs him, throws it down in his face, and none of it counts. It's not going to go down in the NBA history books whatsoever because these 3 NBA officials called a horrible ticky-tack foul and wasted it all away. We could have had the highlight. We could have had people talking about this for weeks and months. It would have gone down in history as one of the biggest NBA highlights of all time, and it's all for naught on a cheap ticky-tack away from the basket foul. Don't call those fouls in the first place because you're stopping the flow of the game. And secondly, please don't call it when Ja Morant's breaking into the lane and possibly going to posterize Victor Wembanyama.
Rod, that was so good and convincing. I think Chris King even agrees with you.
It's a phenomenal dunk. Like, that should be played on your NBA commercials for the next 5 years, right? Because these are 2 young guys that are going to be the face of the NBA. Like, that should be at the beginning of it. A la
you've got a reason
Jordan
to celebrate Ja Morant again, not to make fun of him about guns or hanging out in a club.
Right?
You've got a reason to celebrate him again, and now it's not officially a play.
Yeah, it's just sad. It really was. And that was, I don't even know if you could have called that a foul. It looked like maybe incidental contact at best.
Speaking about fun, speaking about hanging out in clubs, I don't know. Let's go to the Kings Hardwood Hierarchy.
The Hierarchy Club. That sounds like a good place to be. Let's go.
Okay, so up until about 33 minutes ago, it was probably going to be Cleveland as the king, but I'm going to give it to OKC because they just beat the Cavs by 20. So Thunder get the king seat. I'm sorry, but these are the 2 best teams in the NBA right now, and there's no denying that whatsoever, right?
That's a resounding victory, though, to come back and get them by 20. That's good looking out for the Thunder, man. Those dudes are killers. Like, that's the thing with OKC. They seem to never turn it off, which my stinking team has clearly turned it off right now.
Yeah,
I think listen, that's a huge win. I didn't even realize that. Thanks for putting that out there, Chris. But what a great win for OKC. And maybe a sign of things to come. How cool would a 7-game series in the playoffs between those 2 teams be?
Right? No, that would be exciting to watch. And I'm going to put in the Prince, the Houston Rockets. All right. They continue to win. I know they beat up on a depleted Nuggets team the other night, but still they are continuing to win. And they are looking like a tough team that you do not want to see in the playoffs.
Shout out to the stash Reed Shepherd getting 49 in a G League game too, man. Like, that guy's the number 2 overall pick, and he's down in the G League because he can't get any minutes on the Rockets, Jim. That's how good they are.
Yep, there you go. You forgot your mute button again, Jim.
All right, I'm not going to do any more work on the show while I am on the show. This is hard, okay, Chris? It's not easy. All right, it's not a tin can here like you have. So calm down. All right. I don't even care anymore. You would talk about the Rockets. Go ahead. Rockets. Yeah, and Rod, see, not easy for you either, is it? Is it, Rod?
I wasn't making. See, you're getting mad at me. Chris is the one that called you out for it. You did it twice this show, and I never said anything. I just sat back and let it happen.
Yeah,
I let like a 7-minute pause go last time.
Out too. So watch yourself. I mean, all y'all. I don't even care.
I'm sowing chaos.
I will talk about Kevin Owens for the rest of the show by myself. Chris, who's your freaking whatever? What is it called? Jester.
We're not the Jester yet. We got to get to the third place, Jim.
No, that was the Rockets, Rod. That's what started this whole thing.
No, he actually put the Cavs as the queen. He never really mentioned that, but I kind of got there. So.
Yeah. So let's go to Jester. And it really should be the Wizards. They've lost 7 in a row. They are pretty pathetic. But listen, when a team that is supposed to be the team of the NBA, start out the season as the team in the NBA, to turn around and throw up a dud versus Charlotte. They just trade.
They lost to Toronto.
Oh, Toronto.
Point that one out.
Yeah, Toronto.
Same.
That was the most recent. Toronto. It's still a horrible loss.
Raptor, Hornet, both fake animals. Yeah.
And to be fair to the people out there, I was going to be the Wizards until Rod started throwing shots at the beginning of Balls and Brew and just made it become the Celtics. He walked them into that one.
Quite frankly, they deserve it. Honestly, they deserve it. They've given up. They're like, we've been there. We've been to the mountaintop. We don't care about any of these games. We're still just going to shoot 3-pointers, and we refuse to get to the basket. Like, they're laissez-faire right now. They're not playing tough defense. They're not moving the ball on offense. They don't care. So if they don't care, I'm not going to care. I'm not watching the Celtics currently right now. I'm just not watching them because if they don't care, I'm not going to care.
They almost are playing like they act like they deserve it, right? And they don't have to still play and earn these victories. They feel like they just deserve to get the win, or they'll deserve to get to the NBA Finals again. It's like that's how they're playing. I don't get it.
But I also would be remiss if I didn't point out that I think the Nets are kind of over here saying hold my beer because they literally got beat by 59 the other night and we didn't shut them out in the Jester spot.
We needed to, because that was that.
They were down like 64 in the fourth quarter and they'd already pulled the starters in the third.
I was about ready to ask, was that like actual basketball that the Nets were trying to play? Because I don't know. That is not good for the NBA, right? And I think the NBA should. Williams brought it up in the pre-show fist fight that there is a women's hockey league out there that when your team gets eliminated from the playoffs and during the regular season, after that you earn points with every victory, and the team with the most points after that period of time gets the first pick. So you may have a bad team not make the playoffs, but then you keep playing and earn points, and then that will get you the first pick instead of losing. Something to stave off this god-awful basketball that we're seeing from some of these teams.
Look to Canadian women's hockey leagues. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times.
You know what? Who else said it during the pre-show fist fight? I said it, not Williams said it. Thanks for giving him credit for nothing, Chris. Thank you for listening to Balls and Brew. We're going to go to wrestling right now because I've had it with these two. Chris can't even do the exit.
Goodbye, Internet.
Welcome to the Yeah We Know podcast, part of the More You Knows podcast network. In the ring with Jimmy, Rod, and Chris. It is not the Netflix era. It's definitely not the Chris era. Rod, you better watch yourself. But it is, gentlemen, the Penta era. Penta makes his debut on the second show of Netflix, and I will say this. I'm very happy that he made his debut on the second show and not the first show, because the first show, Rod, he would have gotten 3 minutes with Chad Gable.
They still gave him too many minutes. And I like, it's not fair that you gave me a warning and then throw me about a luchador, man. You know I'm not a luchador guy. You opened the show with going to me about a luchador. He was fine. Penta was fine. I'm not going to come down on him, but I was not. The wind wasn't blowing up my skirt for Penta nearly as much as it was for wrestling Twitter.
I think he and Gable had a fantastic match. It was a really great back and forth. Usually they don't do that for a debut. I was a little worried they were going to have him lose. But Chris, overall, what did you think of Penta?
No, listen, I had no idea who he was or
No
where he came
question.
from or that he was going to debut. And I was happy. I liked the character. I liked the look. I was happy with the what I saw in the ring. So it checked most of my boxes. So yeah, I'm happy. I liked a lot of that match. I really did. I have a lot of fun watching Gable work. So I thought this was great.
So Rod isn't, a huge lucha guy. Neither was Vince McMahon or Triple H, if you really look at it, besides the Rey Mysterio for both of them. So we'll see what happens with Penta. A couple things he's got going for him, I think. He does speak a little bit of English, a lot of Spanish in there, but his family was in the crowd. Great place in San Jose for him to be, to do that. The fans really appreciated him there. And also the merch. I mean, that mask was up on WWE.com very quickly. Do you know, in all the time in AEW, they never had a mask for him to sell? I bet you he sold more merch that one day than he did in the entire AEW run.
Yeah, I mean, kids like lucha masks, right? I understand that that's a cool looking lucha mask, right? Skulls, the whole 9 yards, right? But here's my thing. I thought the Mexican Destroyer was cool when Bad Bunny did it. So I just rather see Bad Bunny come back and wrestle again and do the Mexican Destroyer. I don't need to see Penta do it week after week. And Chris said it as well. Let's not forget that Chad Gable was involved in this match.
Of course.
I want to see Penta pull off a cool match versus let's say LA Knight or somebody else who maybe isn't as great in the ring.
Speaking of in-ring work, we've got a Royal Rumble coming up, and we're starting to get people who are announcing themselves for the Rumble. CM Punk comes out and says he's going to win the Royal Rumble. Well, Seth Rollins then comes out and says, I'm entering just to throw you out, and then I'll win the Royal Rumble. And, of course, Drew McIntyre comes out and says he's winning the Royal Rumble. Rod, there's no chance in hell that this is not the main event. The men's Royal Rumble is going to go on last, right?
Well, Jimmy, actually, I have an announcement to make first before I comment on that. I am actually entering the Royal Rumble, and I'm entering the Royal Rumble with one sole purpose, and that is to eliminate Grayson Waller. I believe there can be only one talk show host, and so I have to take down the man who hosts the most must-see talk show in the WWE. So I will be entering the Royal Rumble explicitly to try to take down the man from down under, Grayson Waller. So wish me luck. I've got some training to do. I've got some protein to eat to try to beef up a little bit, but I'm sick of Grayson Waller running his mouth, so I'm entering the Royal Rumble to take him down.
Chris, what do you think of the segment?
I mean, it's great and all. I love Drew McIntyre, but like, let's be honest, the man who's going to win the Rumble announced it first, and that's John Cena.
Cena's not going to win the Rumble. And Jimmy, you're right. The men's Rumble is going to absolutely be the main event. It's going to be crazy. We're going to have like a final 5 or 6 that's going to be like Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, Seth Rollins. I mean, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous at the end of the men's Rumble, and CM Punk will walk out of the ring. I mean, I'm sorry, Chris. I don't like it. I don't want it to be that way. CM Punk drives me crazy, but the man walks on water. He will be gifted the WrestleMania main event.
No, see, I may be, but like, there's another chance, right? King of the Ring, doesn't that happen before WrestleMania?
That's Elimination Chamber, but
or Elimination Chamber. I'm sorry, but then he
It's
can
okay.
earn a rap because I see something where you get Drew, Seth, CM Punk, and possibly somebody else that comes back from the injured list. I don't know, a Bronson Reed maybe that ends up being in an Elimination Chamber type match with all of them.
Could be. They jump around shows. We're going to jump around shows too. Rod, what do you think of your girl, Tiffy Time, champion?
I think that's pretty cool. I think it was a good way to do the Money in the Bank case. I think it was also cool that the WWE basically slapped me right in the face after on this episode I was talking about how the Money in the Bank briefcase was a joke and we don't need to worry about it anymore and do away with it as an event. Then they actually pulled off a cool switch with Tiffy. We all have been wanting it. Now I think we need blonde on blonde, Jim. All right. I think we need Charlotte to come back and tell Tiffy, fun, good for you, but now the real people are back. The real girls are here to take the belt, and blonde on blonde. Let's go. I want to see it.
You mentioned LA Knight and Nakamura had a pretty decent match that was just interference ridden, and the amount of interference that we have in matches is just kind of getting a little ridiculous, and I think we need to tone that down a bit. Chris, you're an old man. Give me a take on that.
I mean, where were you guys like 2 years ago when I told you how tired I was of the Bloodline doing that in every single match? Now all of a sudden you guys are tired of it.
I've always been tired of it, Chris. Always been tired.
I'd like to circle back to Rod. You keep
Sure.
trying to speak her into existence. She will come back.
Well, yeah, she's going to come back. I mean, at this point, it has to be at the Rumble. I mean, it really can't be anywhere else, right?
Yeah, we haven't even seen any. Have we seen any women actually say they're going to be in the Rumble yet?
No one wants to go against Rhea Ripley. Everyone's scared of her. So there's that. No
So,
Rumble.
so no Rumble.
You know who's not scared of Rhea Ripley? Charlotte Flair. Let her come back and take on Rhea if she doesn't want to come back and go blonde on blonde. Charlotte better come back and be the first person to declare for the Rumble. Or she comes back and tells Tiff, I'm taking you on at the Rumble. Come on, Charlotte.
Could she go ahead and just win the Rumble and Elimination Chamber and take both belts and unify the women's division?
Let's just have
yes,
Charlotte
they
win
just
every
added
match.
2 more belts to the women's division, and they're going to unify the championship. Why the hell not, right?
It's the WWE. You tell me anything's possible.
Not as much now with a less insane person running it. Lyra Valkyria is your new Intercontinental Champion. Rod, you a big fan of Lyra?
I think I might be. I'm trying to let the fact that I'm not very familiar with her not color my judgment here. I think it was the right call. I think you basically make Lyra Valkyria be a big deal by putting the belt on her. You know what I mean? Basically the way that we said, you want to make Kevin Owens a big deal, make him WWE champion. That's how you make him a big deal. So we essentially did that with Lyra Valkyria. And I think she's got the moveset in the ring. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's something there. I don't know what her character is right now. And there's a whole lot of kind of like weird butterfly kind of stuff that we got to kind of sort of move that off to the side. But I think she can wrestle. And so I was happy with it because I don't see Dakota Kai. I mean, I just don't. And I think if she wins the belt, we see Damage Control more. And I just don't want to see Damage Control. So I was happy with that.
Chris.
Yeah, no, I think it's the right move too. I wasn't rooting for Party Crashers at all. I don't want them to have belts. I'm still a fan of Io Sky. I won't deny that, but I think you got to give it to the young girl now, right? This is what this belt is supposed to do, right? Help elevate the women's mid-card level talent. This puts these girls now more on a forefront. You get more screen time when you have a belt on. I think it's good. That's what these belts are for anyway.
Okay. I think hopefully we have seen the last of the feud between Damian Priest and the Judgment Day. I think it's time for them to move on. I think Finn Balor and Priest had a really good matchup. Obviously, there was going to be a ton of interference in that. We had the broken arrow off the balcony into the tables. Michael Cole almost said that. I don't think he was supposed to because it wasn't supposed to be tables, but that looked good. Good win for Damian Priest. But where does he go from here, Rod? Does he announce for the Royal Rumble?
I would imagine he's got to be in the Royal Rumble, right? But where I'd like to see him go from here is like, I kind of dig War Raiders and Damian Priest, right? Like just something about their energies together kind of like work for me. If you're trying to take the War Raiders away from like the spooky Vikingness that they used to have and kind of just sort of make them into like badass bikers, who better to run with than the Archer himself. So I like those dudes running together because you forget about those guys, right? Like the horns and all the face paint just like made them seem too campy and weird. But like when you get down to it, they're ass beaters. You know what I mean? They're like, they're like APA. You know what I mean? Like these guys can just go in and just pound dudes in the ring because they're big guys. So I like seeing them a little involved. That's kind of, I'm like, okay, maybe Damian Priest is a guy who can help people along a little bit, right? Like maybe he's not going to be a top of the line guy, but he can clearly be important and he's clearly good on a microphone. So let's have Damian Priest help some other dudes along. So I dig that.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, listen, I like them. I like the fact that they actually have real tag team moves. I think they can make a move now in the tag team division that they're aligned with Priest. They have a little bit more sway, I think, and it's obvious that they have talent. I mean, they are athletes in that ring. They're a lot more than I anticipated. So, yeah, I like it.
Few news bites here before we get out of here. Corey Graves not very happy apparently with being changed to SmackDown because he's not as popular as other people. It looked like it was going to be a work. It might be a shoot though, because he wasn't actually on NXT.
Oh, I think that's definitely a shoot. And I sniffed this one out a little bit, Jimmy. I called it as soon as the word started coming down. I said it's not fair to Corey Graves. Like, I clearly understand in the world that Pat McAfee is a huge star. I'm not a Pat McAfee sycophant, but I'm not a Pat McAfee hater by any means, right? The thing that bums me out a little bit, and I also understand it, right? The man's awfully busy with an everyday radio show, and then college football keeps him awfully busy, but he seems to not know as much about the product at times, and then he kind of gets gradually back into it. And so that bums me out. But Graves has not done anything wrong. And that's the thing that just makes me sad about the situation here. You've had three-man booths before. You don't need to have a three-man booth at NXT other than to make it look like he's being demoted. So just have him be the third man on one of the other shows. If you don't want it to be on your big new shiny Netflix because you got Michael Cole, the legend, and Pat McAfee, the big star, that's fine. But you could sit him there with Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett, because it looks bad that you brought Joe Tess in, who's not a WWE guy, and he's getting the job over Graves. And then it looks bad that Wade Barrett, a guy who hasn't been after it as long as Corey Graves has, is getting the job over him. So I feel bad for Corey. I think he does a very good job, and I hope to see him back someday.
Because remember, there was a... Go ahead.
I was going to say, how can he not have known that this was going to happen, right? You had McAfee and Cole on Raw all last year until college football started up again, and ESPN trumps everything. So McAfee had to step back and make sure he did the college football gig. So how did the WWE not know or communicate that, hey, I mean, Michael Cole should have known, if anything, that McAfee is going to be coming back. We will probably be going back to Raw once we hit Netflix, because his duties with college football will be done at that point. Like, how was this not written on the wall? How was this a surprise to anybody?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. It'll be interesting, though, because Corey Graves, Rod, he didn't do anything wrong. He did everything right. He was really good. He was even the head play-by-play person there for a little bit with Wade Barrett. So it is a shame. Hopefully everything gets worked out, or hopefully it's just a big shoot and they're a work and they're trying to do something.
So, but Chris, what's your take on this, though? Like, Chris, you didn't even really give a take on the situation here. You just like sort of re-clarified it there.
Well, I don't think. I can't envision a scenario where he didn't realize that this was going to happen, or it was at best
okay, that's fine. Who would you
good
rather hear doing wrestling commentary, Pat McAfee or Corey Graves?
It's tough because McAfee does a good job.
I'm probably going to suggest McAfee because I'm a Pat McAfee fan. I have been since before his radio program when he was trying to do stand-up locally in Indianapolis, right? So I've been a McAfee fan, so I'm still going to probably pick him. But that doesn't...
Are you against the three-man booth?
No. No, I'm not.
That's my
but I think it's weird.
Corey Graves had to get.
I'm hoping that my point is I'm hoping that this is a work and not a real shoot, because I don't think there's a scenario where he shouldn't have known that this was at least a legit possibility that this happens once McAfee's done with college football. And Michael Cole will want to go back to Raw.
A three-man booth is tough. Three-man booth is tough when you have those big personalities in there. So that's one thing I would shoot back on there. Saturday night's main event coming back again on January 25th. That's that's like a week away, isn't it? Weird. About a week and a half away. It is, but it's more money for WWE, a little bit more exposure on the network, on network television.
But no,
Sheamus
changing hands. It's going to be a big waste of time.
It might be. It just might be, because Sheamus is going against Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental Championship. They're going to do that big story of Sheamus still hasn't won that. He needs to get that Intercontinental Championship. I think Braun Breaker's going to win that. No.
Belts like a week before the Rumble?
Not a chance. Now, Jey Uso's definitely going to beat Gunther. I mean, there's no way. I think that's going to be a fun match. Crowd will be hot. But, yeah, Gunther's got to get some title wins here. Who is he, Roman Reigns? Is he Cody Rhodes? What's going on here?
I want to circle back, right, just real quick to Braun Breaker and the Intercontinental, right? They've already shown that he can lose that randomly on a weeknight show, right? And then get it back. Is that going to be type of gig that he does where he ends up losing it and then gets it right back and holds it for a little bit, loses it, runs it right back, holds it for a little bit. Is this going to be
a random show? He lost it on a PLE and then won it back on a Raw.
well? Okay, tomato, but like he lost it where we didn't think or anybody expected him to, and then he had to win it back. So like this isn't a PLE, but it's definitely a Saturday night main event, which feels like a PLE a little bit.
I mean, it'll have good matches, but it's that Saudi PLE where it doesn't really matter, and it's going to be really weird when the Rumble's there, and it shouldn't really matter. So we'll see what happens.
They're also not going to trust Jesse Ventura on commentary for any kind of title change here, and they're going to put him back on them for one match, and so they're not having a belt change hand. Even though I'll tell you, Jesse gave the commentator soundbite of the year when he said, "Is Cody going to cheat?" That was the best. That was the best wrestling commentary soundbite of the year.
Rod always being the number one Cody Rhodes fan. TNA and WWE have signed a multi-year deal to do some talent exchanges. And if you say his name, and you're going to talk, Rod, because I got to sneeze.
Yes, this means Joe Henry's coming back for the Rumble, Jimmy, and I'm going to pop so huge.
Now, it's an NXT TNA thing, but listen, Jordynne Grace is going to be back in the Royal Rumble again. She's a really solid competitor. Tessa Blanchard, who, behind the curtain, maybe not the best person ever, I guess. I don't know. Maybe she's changed.
Certainly
in the ring. Very, very solid. So that's kind of cool. Maybe she'll be in a Rumble because we do need women for that. But yeah, say his name and he appears. Henry's got to be in the Royal Rumble.
Oh, Indianapolis is going to go crazy. He's going to come down in the blue shirt. He's going to have the highlight frosted tips. He's going to pop around, and it's going to be absolutely phenomenal, Chris. Phenomenal.
I can't wait to see him.
And with that, you've been listening to Yeah We Know podcast, part of the More You Knows podcast network. You're in the ring with the phenomenal Jimmy, because I don't like these two guys.
And speaking of phenomenal, AJ Styles, you were thought of, my man. Wouldn't it be cool to see you back in the Rumble?
Goodbye, Net. Yeah.
LA Knight, win a match. All right, LA, win a match.
Shout out to Bob Uecker, WrestleMania 3. Awesome.
Hall of Famer. I love that I've staked out I'm a Cody